Welcome back, everyone. This will be my brand new Spider-Man No Way Home Marvel video. There were just a bunch of previews that Marvel just dropped, and Tom Holland was talking about the end of Spider-Man as you know him, the end of this franchise, the conclusion of this version of Spider-Man. So I'll explain what he was talking about, because I know there's all kinds of questions now. If Spider-Man No Way Home is meant to be the end of this version of Spider-Man, what's going to happen with the future of Spider-Man? If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. There's going to be a lot of Spider-Man stuff happening in the next couple of months. But if you didn't see the news, recently Marvel just did a big preview for Spider-Man No Way Home featuring some new scenes. I'll talk about that first, then I'll talk about Tom Holland revealing that Marvel's basically treating the movie like it's the end of their Spider-Man franchise as you know it. So just talking about these new scenes, first new scene that they released is Spider-Man and Doctor Strange in front of the Sanctum. I love how you look, zoom in and enhance in the background here, you can just see Doctor Strange judging him silently while he crouches, getting ready to take off. I know there's still lots of questions about why he has the amulet, the Eye of Agamotto there, because he doesn't have the Time Stone anymore, but I think the idea is that when he handed it to Thanos during Avengers Infinity War, he handed him a fake amulet, but he did give him the real Time Stone. When he came back in Avengers Endgame, he wasn't wearing the amulet, so there were a lot of questions about why he has it now, but he didn't have it during Avengers Endgame when they came back for the big portal scene in that final battle. Usually it's because different movie teams, different directors just want to do different things with the characters, and the reason why they probably didn't use the amulet during Avengers Endgame is because they wanted to keep it in continuity because the last you saw, it got crushed. In Jon Watts, and then during Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness, they wanted him to be wearing the amulet, so they just worked backwards from that, saying, oh, Thanos crushed a fake one, Doctor Strange didn't give him the real amulet, he just gave him the real Time Stone. But this scene of them in front of the Sanctum seems like it's after Doctor Strange's spell, and Spider-Man is still kind of learning about all the unintended consequences of literally making everyone forget that he's Spider-Man. If it wasn't clear from the last big trailer footage, what Doctor Strange's spell does is effectively weave together aspects of different timelines, different universes, where no one learned Peter Parker was Spider-Man. And if you notice, Doctor Strange is weaving 3 giant circles around himself. Those represent the different realities that he's weaving together, the different timelines. So one of those timelines represents the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, one of them represents the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies, and another one represents yet another universe. Maybe the Venom universe, don't worry, I'll talk about that too when we talk about the future of Spider-Man. But what it effectively does is it erases everyone's memories on the planet about the experiences that Spider-Man had with them, even if they just experienced him on a giant screen with J. Jonah Jameson yelling about him. That includes all the bad stuff that he was involved in, all the good stuff too. All the events of the MCU Spider-Man movies, the events of Captain America Civil War, Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame. So all of the other Avengers, besides Doctor Strange, forget about him because he's casting the spell, so he's kind of immune to the side effects here. And all the villains forget about him too, which is what he's really trying to go for. It's kind of like the movie It's a Wonderful Life. What would have happened if George Bailey never existed? He gets to see how all of his friends and family's lives changed, usually for the worse. So in true Spider-Man fashion, Spider-Man just makes things worse. Then if you remember all the Thanos unsnap memes after Avengers Infinity War, you have to imagine that Spider-Man tries to attempt that. Like, please, undo, undo, undo. That's where you get to the scene of him fighting Doctor Strange in the trailer, and him just being like, no, dude, seriously, stop it, you're only making things worse. And that's how you spin up to the big Sinister Six multiverse situation going on in the movie, with all the Sinister Six villains from Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man movies and the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies. But the second new scene that they released here is of him and MJ jumping off the Queensboro Bridge after they've been caught by the New York City police helicopter. Because in all the trailer footage here, you see at the beginning of the movie they're trying to arrest him, haul him in for questioning, and that's what this scene is here. I love the look on Zendaya's face here too. It looks like she is crapping her pants. So the scene of him on the bridge here is probably in the middle of all this web slinging when they're swinging past J. Jonah Jameson's broadcasts of him calling out Spider-Man on those giant screens, and he's taking MJ back to Queens and heading back to his house, thus the stop on the Queensboro Bridge. Then just charting the timeline, he makes it home to Aunt May. You have this scene here where the police come to their door because they know that he's Spider-Man. They know that Spider-Man lives with Aunt May. Then you have the scene of him being grilled by the detectives about the drones, and he gets the idea to ask Doctor Strange for his help. There'll be a new trailer in the next few weeks, maybe with the Eternals movie hitting theaters, so we'll get a bunch of new footage in that and maybe some more context about what's going on with the Sinister Six characters in this crazier version of Doctor Strange, and all the Tobey Maguire aspects of the movie and the Andrew Garfield characters. But the really big thing everyone was talking about yesterday was Tom Holland explaining the end of this version of Spider-Man, the movie being the end of the Spider-Man franchise at Marvel. Here's his exact quotes. He says, "We're all treating No Way Home as the end of a franchise. I think if we're lucky enough to dive into these characters again, you'd be seeing a very different version. It would no longer be the Homecoming trilogy. We would give it some time and try to build something different and totally change the films. Whether that happens or not, I don't know, but we're definitely treating No Way Home like it was coming to an end, and it felt like it. Then he goes on talking about working with his co-stars. He says, we've been making these films for 5 years now. We've had such an amazing relationship, the three of us, talking about Zendaya and Jacob Batalon, who play MJ and Ned Leeds. We've been with each other every other step of the way. We've done every single film, every single press tour. So we didn't know if this would be the last time we were all working together. It was really heartbreaking, but also really exciting because we're all moving on to the next chapter of our careers. So sharing that moment with them was maybe the best day I've ever had on set. I don't think I've ever cried like that, ever. So all these actors, including Tom Holland, is kind of treating Spider-Man No Way Home like it is the end of Spider-Man as you know it at Marvel. Even though that sounds super serious, first things first, that does not mean that Marvel is going to stop making Spider-Man movies. It doesn't mean that Sony is going to take back Spider-Man and start doing the main Peter Parker Spider-Man movies themselves. Spider-Man is still staying in the MCU. The Sony president has already said as of last year they plan on continuing to share Spider-Man with Marvel and doing more movies like they've been doing with the previous Spider-Man MCU movies, and Tom Holland is going to keep playing the main version of Peter Parker Spider-Man. What Tom Holland means when he says the end of a franchise, the end of this version of Spider-Man, is that in his quote he mentions that they take a break from the solo Spider-Man movies for a little while longer than they usually would between films, and then they'd come back with a fourth Tom Holland Spider-Man movie. It would be a different director because Jon Watts is moving on to the Fantastic Four movies at Marvel, their brand new trilogy of Fantastic Four films they're working on. It'd be a totally different vibe for the movies because he wouldn't be a high school kid following him through school. It wouldn't be like the Harry Potter films anymore. And it'd be a totally different direction that they would take the Spider-Man character. So there's been a new Spider-Man movie about every 2 years since they started his Spider-Man trilogy. So after Spider-Man No Way Home, Spider-Man 4, whatever the title winds up being, probably wouldn't be released for like 3 or 4 years maybe. In between Spider-Man 3 and Spider-Man 4, during however many years that break winds up being, Tom Holland's Spider-Man would just cross over into other people's movies. And they do different kinds of Spider-Man movies. That includes, a lot of you have also figured this out, the Spider-Man Venom crossover movie that Tom Hardy and Andy Serkis were hyping up. So big spoiler warning for the Venom Let There Be Carnage post-credit scene if you haven't seen that movie yet. Just real big blanket spoiler warning. So in the Venom Let There Be Carnage post-credit scene, Venom gets teleported into the MCU and sees a J. Jonah Jameson broadcast yelling about Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and you clearly see that it's Tom Holland's Spider-Man on screen without his mask on. And the Venom symbiote speaks as if he plans to go after him, like he's a bad guy that he's going to go take down, like they're hyping up Spider-Man vs. Venom when they meet for the first time in the flesh. I did a much bigger video on that Venom Let There Be Carnage post-credit scene, so I'll link that below in the description and at the end of this so you can watch that full version. But that Spider-Man vs. Venom movie sounds like it would happen before Spider-Man 4, just the way Tom Holland is talking. And when Tom Holland says the next Spider-Man trilogy of solo movies would be a totally different story, totally different vibe, they're probably thinking more along the lines of doing a Miles Morales Spider-Man arc with a live-action version and Tom Holland's Spider-Man just co-headlining like a team-up arc with the two of them, with Tom Holland's Spider-Man training him. That's why they probably waited so long to introduce a live-action Miles Morales character. Even though he exists as of Spider-Man Homecoming, we just haven't seen him on screen yet. So for example, I'm expecting at least a small cameo scene for Spider-Man in Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness because there's so much Doctor Strange going on in this movie. But after that, we know that they plan on including Spider-Man in Avengers 5. Beyond that is anyone's guess. Maybe Captain America 4, but maybe also the new Fantastic Four movie. It feels more appropriate for Spider-Man to cross over into Fantastic Four just because of his history with that team in the comics. Everybody brace yourself for the MCU bombastic Bagman. So hopefully that explains what's going on with the future of Spider-Man. Yes, even though they're sort of ending this trilogy, it's the same thing with Avengers Endgame. It's meant to be the end of the Infinity Saga of movies, but it's not the end of the Avengers movies. There will be an Avengers 5. They were just talking about it this week. If there's any big questions that you have about what's going on with the movie or what's going on with the future of Spider-Man that I didn't cover in this video, just write them below in the comments and I'll add them to my future videos. This weekend is DC Fandom, so there's going to be a bunch of big trailers like the Batman trailer, a whole bunch of other trailers for the upcoming movies. I will do videos for all those trailers, so don't worry. Everyone click here for that full Venom Let There Be Carnage post-credit scene. And everyone click here for that big Marvel Daredevil announcement about the character coming back. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.